4 components to building character with your child. My approach was using letters. Whether you use letters or other means of communication, the 4 components to build character with your child are A, communication, B, leading by example, 3 or C is empowerment, 4 is developing a prosperity mindset.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to today's episode of the My Future Business Show. I'm on the line with Joseph Cohen. How are you, Joseph?
Excellent. It's great to be with you. How are you doing?
Oh, yes. Like I said earlier, I have 2 feet and a heartbeat. I can't complain now. For everybody who's listening to the show today, Joseph and his son have co-authored the book Right Father, Right Son, and that's WRITE for anyone who's wondering, which is a bond-building story that looks at fatherhood through correspondence that both Joseph and his son has had together up until this point. So before we jump into that, Joseph, I think it's very important to give some, I guess, a backstory about how it came to be that you and your son wrote this wonderful book.
Great question. And you know, as a dad, being a former New York City public school middle and high school teacher, it taught me about the importance of good parenting. I've seen families who do a great job and you see the outcome.
Yep.
And I've seen families who have been deficient and you see the outcome as well. So, 7 years in the public schools in the inner city, working with at-risk youth, informed me a great deal. And, it helped me plant the seeds of development for my son and our relationship. And ultimately, what I've done with the book is building character with my son through letters. And it was an intentional thing to model better communication with Jared than my dad did for me. He was a first generation Syrian American and excellent father in many ways, but he didn't have the kind of modeling that fostered great communication. So, during my late teen years, we had issues, and over time, I was able to come to terms with those things. And as a writer, as a journalist in college, and a teacher and a dad, I've been able to document the development of our relationship through letters. And for the first 12 or so years writing letters, there was nothing coming back. I started when he was about 8 years old. He was a voracious reader and he liked to be read to. So the first couple of years between 8 and 10, it was just me, writing him letters on birthdays and other occasions just to tell him what a good job he was doing, etc. And then as the teenage years got closer, his personality got a little bit more complex. And writing letters were a way for me to plant seeds of development. And I used letter writing to acknowledge him, to praise him, to challenge him, to admonish him sometimes. And, it was a way for me to sit down and think clearly and deliberately about what I wanted to say, and would hand him a letter. And like I said, between ages 8 and 20, I never got a single response. However,
that's a long time, isn't it?
Well, that's an investment. You're a parent,
Yep.
You put in the good time and the energy, and you know that on the, end of it, the other end, you're going to get a good result. You see that. But when he was 20 years old, living away from home with a wonderful gal that he had met while in college,
Mm-hmm.
he started writing me letters back, and those letters included some short stories that he had written. And then after about 6 months, he went away to Edinburgh, Scotland, to do a study abroad program, which brought him to do some feature writing for that student magazine there. And his letters now included stories that were coming back. So what began as a way for me to just communicate developed into something far different.
Yeah, something far deeper. I congratulate you on this movement that you've started, and where you're really addressing for many fathers out there some of the core issues. I've been watching your video series, and I really like them. I really took some. It gives more context to just the book, so they're a wonderful resource, and we'll share the URL to that a bit later on. As a father, I'll go back one step. As a son, I actually had a few struggles along the way, as we all do. I think for very much the same reason, Joseph. That distant fathering, if you like, lack of resources, I guess, lack of experience and knowledge of how to communicate and work with your son to build that relationship, maybe through the fact that he was always away working elsewhere. These are wonderful things to be aware of and across as a father. But I'd like to know, is this a book that that any age group can look at, or is it just the 8 and beyond?
I think it's for any age group, and here's the reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Because the theme is building character with your child through letters. And there are four main components. One is communication. The second is leading by example.
Yeah.
The third is empowerment. And the fourth is developing a prosperity mindset. Now, interestingly, after I had published the book, I came through a mutual friend in touch with a wonderful man who's now my partner with Empowered Fathers in Action.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nonprofit that has a mission that it's all about creating better father-son relationships, while in the process addressing a very critical issue here in the States, which is school shootings and bullying, improving self-esteem and, overall just improving father-son relationships. And the interview that I had done with Chris Salem, who is an international best-selling author,
Yes,
and a keynote speaker, led to our partnering with workshops. And then later on, we decided that we wanted to address a larger issue. He, like many men of our generation, had challenges with his dad. And, often the greatest challenges that we have in our life become the things that define us the most,
mm-hmm.
and through which we grow most significantly. Was that your experience with your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything was experiential. There was nothing about my life that I could refer back to if it wasn't related directly to him, in terms of how I looked in the mirror and saw myself.
I understand. A mom and a dad are critical, but neither do the job that the other can do. So as important as our moms are, setting the tone at an early age, for a boy, because of the role modeling, the relationship with the father is critical. It's critical, and without it, a boy is dad deprived. And studies show, because I've done a lot of research for the writing that I'm doing for my second book,
Yeah.
that there's a direct correlation between the lack of a father figure and all kinds of negative stuff. I don't want to get into the minutia of it here
Yeah.
because we want to cover a lot of stuff, but at some point later, perhaps we can delve into that a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to have a father figure, be it a stepfather or I guess a blood parent. Regardless, having that role model there is one thing, but we also have some other dimensions to this in the age of, the 21st century age of technology and omnipresent distraction and social media and all these other stimulations that we have that are bombarding our boys. How do you go about I guess, communicating about those things with your son?
That's a great question. And my son, who is now 27, going to be 28 very shortly,
Yes.
he travels the world with his band. He's a DJ. He also does digital media marketing and some other type of consulting. So when he was growing up, the greatest challenge that I had with him relative to the media, and I write about it in the book, was dealing with rap lyrics. And the way that I handled that was through communication by putting myself in his space, and rather than judging, embracing. So I asked 3 questions in the workshops that we do. Can you see me? Do you hear me? And what can you teach me? So can you see me is all about acknowledging and appreciating what your son is going through, whether it's dealing with a lot of technology. There's a reason why boys, children gravitate to gadgets and such.
Yeah.
And, and the second question is, can you hear me? And so when your son is explaining, what they're going through, you just want to ask a lot of clarifying questions so they understand that you're interested in understanding it from their perspective. And then finally, the third question is, what can you teach me? As parents, our children are looking for wisdom. It might not always seem that way. And certainly when you have kids as young as yours, maybe it hasn't gotten to that point because they look up to you in a different way than they are when they're teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, you have to provide them wisdom, knowledge. And that is done through constructive criticism and example. You do that more by who you are than what you say.
Your behavior.
Yeah, no question. You're leading by example.
Do you find that with your son, he was 27, coming up to 27?
Coming up to 28.
Oh, wow. So do you find that even at this stage that you still use the same techniques? And is he aware of it?
Absolutely. I don't know if he is, but I use those because they're the foundation of any good relationship, whether it's with between 2 adults, 2 brothers, a sibling, a son. It really doesn't matter. Those are 3 fundamental questions, right?
Yeah.
Do you see me? Right? Can you hear me? And what do you got for me? How can you impact change? What value can you bring to my life?
Yeah, they're wonderful questions. I sit here as a father, and I often sit in front, just observing my children and projecting, 10, 12 years down the track, and we're looking at individuals here. We're looking at human beings that we've created, and as fathers, it's our obligation to do what we can to look after them. When somebody comes and comes across your book and they read it, and they feel like they're struggling, what would you say to that father?
Well, you first it goes back to those 3 questions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see me? Can you hear me? What are the issues? Trying to understand what's going on and clarifying what the challenges are, because everyone's doing the best that they can with the level of awareness that they have. You've probably come across that expression, if you knew better, you do better. So, we're all operating from a certain level of awareness.
Yes, absolutely. So it seems to me that these three fundamental questions, uh, from the moment in time that they have the cognitive ability to absorb those three questions, I'd say it was about seven onwards. They're the same fundamental questions you could ask throughout their life.
Well, those questions are asked, that attitude, the way in which we communicate with our kids from a way younger age, from a much younger age, from the age of 3 or 4, but obviously using different words and,
Yeah.
all of that. But it's a mindset, really. It's a mindset of communicating, of relating. It's a collaborative approach rather than a dictatorial or authoritative approach. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, look, that's much different than, in my experience when I was growing up, there was do as I say, not as I do. It certainly was authoritative approach. And, I look at my boys today and I try to be as much as possible, that collaborative approach. This is a journey that we're on together.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And there's a paradigm that has begun to shift uh, because of generations and a generation that has passed and ways in which they communicated and modeled um, masculinity, and those models aren't serving aren't serving so well.
No.
So we're in the midst of a change, and it's an exciting time, and it's also a very challenging time.
There seems to be like a lot of, this discussion and the wider communities about what's the right approach, and everybody has their own approach to being a father. It certainly isn't a one shoe fits all approach, is it?
Absolutely not. But there are fundamental principles.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, there's, from my perspective, 4 components to building character with your child. Now, I have a background as a journalist. I have a journalism degree. I taught English in the middle school
Yeah.
and journalism in the high schools. So my approach was using letters. But whether you use letters or other means of communication, the 4 components to build character with your child are: A, communication; B, leading by example; 3 or C is empowerment; and then 4 is developing a prosperity mindset. And those components were things that I was made aware of through the work that I'm doing with my partner Chris Salem, and the work that he does utilizes those components. In fact, when we did that first interview a couple of years ago, what we found is that the components that we were both utilizing to help people get to their next level um, were the same, which is the reason why we're working together.
Yeah.
They are universal, and that it works across age barriers.
Yeah, I mean, as a father, I'm sitting here with, ears wide open, taking in as much of this great content as I suggest many of the fathers who are listening to this show do also. If we could, Joseph, could we talk a little bit more about, I guess, the core of this reference to it being a global crisis that you're addressing? What are some of the things that are part of that?
Well, there's a direct correlation between the school shootings that we're seeing,
Hmm.
the bullying that we're seeing, uh, you know, the terrorist acts, between that and a void, a father void. They, Dr. Warren Farrell, who wrote the book, The Boy Crisis, refers to it as being dad deprived. And without proper role modeling, a character isn't developed. And so rather than getting the right stuff from a reliable source, boys are looking elsewhere for models, but they're not serving what is most necessary, which is building character.
Yeah, and this is where I touched on technology before, was because our boys love technology. They have their tablets, they're accessing the internet, although it be guided at this stage, given their early age. And I often sit there contemplating, who are they talking to? Where are they getting their ideas from? Because we're really planting seeds, aren't we, as each day goes by for our children?
You're planting seeds by the person that you are.
Yeah.
You know, by being the best person that you can be, you're doing the most that you can for your child.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself, you as a parent, looking at your particular experience as a dad? Do you ever find that you've it's the end of a day, you get tired? Do you find that your own perspectives, change when you are tired? And do you still refer to the pen at that stage, or do you wait till your energy levels are up?
Well, it's actually been many years since I've been parenting
Mm-hmm.
at the level that you are.
Yeah.
But because my son went off to school and moved out on his own, and we began writing this book when he was away at college. But reflecting back, I would always find a quiet time.
Yeah.
And use that space as a way to reflect. And I would draft letters. The great thing about writing a letter
Yeah.
is that you can work on it a while and get it to say exactly what you mean. Unlike a conversation where there's that push and pull, and you kind of
Emotions.
caught in the moment, and you lose your train of thought. So it's very intentional. And when you give someone a letter, they have it forever. It's
It's set in stone, as it were.
it's something to refer to. It's a
I have a pen in my hand, and I think to myself, the power of the pen is so underrated, and it's also an art form that we are slowly but surely losing as time goes by, I believe. What's your take on that? Do you think that, given that we're in the 21st century, should we be moving towards using videos maybe to communicate that same thing?
The written word is very potent.
Yeah.
Because it's intentional.
Yeah.
To craft a good message, one needs to reflect, and one needs to draft, and in that process, you're becoming aware of emotions. You're clarifying your thoughts. So although videos are very immediate and they certainly are attractive, it's a very different medium than a letter.
Oh, because I mention it because you have this focus with your series of videos there, and I really love them, and I hope you do more. About the different topics, but I can see the difference, from a very connected point of view, that power of the pen. Get that piece of paper, write it down. You have to get in that moment, get in that zone, and you really need to think about it, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to read something very brief from the introduction of the book. A warm, thoughtful letter is one of the kindest gifts we can give to our children as they grow. Unlike a text message or a phone call, a letter is a tangible piece of communication. we can actually hold on to the pen and paper, and we can read the letters we've received over and over again without fear of their being deleted or forgotten. We also have more control in how we communicate through our letters.
That just sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Additionally, here's this one little piece. Meaning rises up from giving parts of yourself away to your child through letter writing without any expectation of getting those parts back. That's why we must keep writing to them, showing up for them, acknowledging them in significant, focused, affirmative ways, praising their achievements to build self-esteem, and providing constructive feedback as a way to teach life lessons.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. I can't tell you enough from, I guess, one father to another how proud I am to be a dad, and how challenging but how rewarding this entire process is, and to have had some time with you talking on the show is certainly opened up my eyes just that little bit wider. In fact, the most poignant part for me was the power of the pen once again.
Yeah, it's an art form that has receded because of the advances in technology.
Yeah.
And we know that technology is a wonderful thing, and it has its place.
Yeah.
And there are limits to it, and we use what we can, and there are many different modes of communication, writing being one of them.
Yeah, probably remains to be the most powerful. I mean, there are library filled with the written word for a reason, isn't there? So if we want to know more about your book, where are we going to go to find it?
We are going to go to www.writefatherwriteson.com, and that's write as in writing a letter,
Yep,
which is spelled W-R-I-T-E, so that's W-R-I-T-E, father, F-A-T-H-E-R, write son, write father, writeson.com.
Well, that's fantastic, Joseph. I will be making all of the links available for everybody who's listening to the show. And it's been just an absolute pleasure having you on the My Future Business show with me today.
Wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with your audience.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.